Well, the curtain has closed on Auto Club Speedway as we know it, but we still got two races to go over as we had a doubleheader Sunday with both the Xfinity Series and Cup Series in action. We're going to break down Kyle Busch getting a huge win, his first with Richard Childress Racing in just a second start. And also, we're going to go over the action from the Xfinity Series with John Hunter Nemechek. Continues his start to the season, gets his first win with Joe Gibbs Racing this season. Also, we're going to be discussing what was a pretty hot topic on social media this past week, whether NASCAR should do away with overtime finishes or some changes need to be made in general. I will give my opinion on that. But we're going to start things out a little different this week since the Cup Series was the first race of the day. That's where we're going to start on this week's episode of 3 Wide. Now, before we get started on this week's episode, let me tell you about our presenting sponsor, Hunt to Harvest. Now, Hunt to Harvest, they are back with us for our second season here at 3 Wide, and we are excited to have them join us again. Right now, they're having a special sale on their long sleeve and short sleeve shirts, as well as a new special called the Mystery Box. And that is where you can get 3 shirts chosen at random sent to you for $33 and $11 a shirt. With the high quality shirts you get from Hunt to Harvest, you can't beat this deal. So head on over to hunttoharvest.com. That's HUNTTOHARVEST.com. And you just simply click on the Mystery Box option there at the top. Select the size you want, add to your cart, and when you go to checkout, be sure to enter that promo code RADNEY18923. That's RADNEY 18923 for even more savings at hunttoharvest.com. So on Sunday, we had what will be the last Cup race and Xfinity race at the current configuration of Auto Club Speedway, and Kyle Busch closes the history of this track in the Cup Series, winning in just his second start at Richard Childress Racing. And Ross Chastain was dominant for most of this race. He led and won stages 1 and 2, lost the lead to Kyle late into stage 3, right before they were getting ready to make green flag pit stops. And once Kyle got that clean air, he was checked out, finished just about 3 seconds over Chase Elliott in second. Ross Chastain did come home in third, so a solid day still points-wise for Ross Chastain. But Kyle Busch gets it done in the last race at Auto Club Speedway, the track that he went and won his first career race at with Rick Hendrick back in 2005. And with this win and the way Kyle has started out the year, I mean, it's very impressive. I know we're only 2 races in as far as the regular season goes, but he has really come out of the gates hot. I'm not surprised to see him win in this 8 car. I didn't expect this hot of a start from him. I thought it might take a little bit of time to get adjusted, but it has not taken any time at all. He came out into the Clash, finished in third place, was really strong there at the Daytona 500. He was leading there at the end when the caution came out just before they took the white flag, and he wound up not winning the Daytona 500. Obviously, that was a big discussion over the week, but he has come out strong, and this is a team that won a handful of races last year with Tyler Reddick. Could have won more if circumstances had went their way. But Kyle has taken this team and elevated it. Coming in, it was a question of, would this team be a championship contending team? We knew it would be a playoff team. How deep could they go, and could they contend for a championship? Well, now he's making this team look like the early season championship favorite. I mean, he is really lighting it up and doing great. And I think a big part of that is Kyle is coming in racing with a chip on his shoulder. Now, whatever your opinion is of the whole exit from Joe Gibbs Racing and the back and forth between Kyle and Joe Gibbs and David Wilson with Toyota Racing Development, whatever your opinion is there, Kyle, I think, in the words of Michael Jordan on his Last Dance documentary, Kyle has taken it personally. He wants to go out there and dominate, show that he is still Kyle Busch. He can still get the job done, and he can go out, win multiple races, and lock up some championships. And early on, it's looking like he's in good shape to do it. I mean, he is completely motivated. You can see, and it's just a different type of motivation. It's not a pissed off motivation. It's a different kind of motivated Kyle we're seeing, and this is a dangerous motivated Kyle. So keep an eye on him. It'll be interesting to see. He's got good chemistry with his team and his crew chief. Can they keep this up through the whole season? They're starting out hot, but we've seen plenty of times, as the summer kicks in, that long stretch, performance kind of starts to wane off. But Kyle's looking pretty good, and it'll be interesting to see how long he can keep up this momentum and if he can win multiple races and set himself up to go deep in the playoffs from the get go. And you can see his performance really affecting and trending over to his teammate Austin Dillon. Now, Austin played a big part in getting Kyle in that 8 car, and Austin has been just as competitive here at the start of the season as Kyle. He was in the running for a win at the Clash. He finished second. Then at the Daytona 500, he was committed to pushing Kyle to the checkered flag, getting him that win, and he finishes in ninth place at Auto Club Speedway. And Austin is a quietly consistent driver. He's going to knock out these top tens. He's going to hang around. He's really good at getting the most out of his equipment. But the way he's running right now, and just it seems like momentum is really with this group as a whole. I wouldn't be surprised to see Austin get one or multiple wins and have a good playoff run, probably the best he's had in his career. Now, you had some other drivers really have some strong runs at the track. Daniel Suarez, he finished in fourth. He was a driver I mentioned last week to be a guy to watch after his strong run last season, where he was within a good shot of getting the win there last season. So he finishes fourth, his teammate third. They're just further proving that Trackhouse Racing is here to stay. They're going to become a real threat and one of the strongest teams in that Chevrolet camp. So a solid day for Suarez. Brad Keselowski, he came home seventh. Good solid top 10 for him and RFK Racing. And him and Busher, they're starting off better this season than they did last year. I know they missed the Clash, but they're looking a lot more competitive than they did last season. Chris Busher came with another top 15 finish in 13th. So he had a good run there, and that's Chris's MO. He's a solid, consistent driver. And it'll be interesting to see as they go through this West Coast swing, we get ready to go to Las Vegas. Can they carry this over? Brad is very good at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. I feel like this is also a track that is within Chris's wheelhouse where he can grind out a good solid top 10. And also, Alex Bowman, he finishes in eighth, continues his hot start to the season, won the pole at the Daytona 500, finished in the top five there. He signs a multi year contract extension with Ally to stay at Hendrick Motorsports, and he gets another top 10 here at Auto Club Speedway. So now he's got the momentum going into Las Vegas, looking to repeat as a winner as he won last year's race there. Some drivers who didn't get top tens but still had good solid days. Last week's Daytona 500 winner Ricky Stenhouse Jr. comes home in 12th after a solid day where he was up there in that top 15. And he said over the week that now with the Daytona 500 win, with this playoff spot, his focus is to finish in the top 15, be more consistent, staying up there, getting as many points as he can to kind of safeguard his position just in case we do run into more winners than we had last year. Also, you had Corey LaJoy. He finished in 14th, and this was a surprise good day for Corey. He did start up front due to qualifying being rained out and the metric that NASCAR used to set up the starting field, but he stayed up there. He didn't sink back. He stayed in the top 15, was at one point in the top 10, and I really thought, hey, if the pit cycle goes right for him, he could come away here with a top 10. So last year, Corey Inspire Motorsports, I know they had high hopes coming into the season. And I know Corey was hoping to be more competitive, running more in the top 25, top 20 than what he did. Ultimately, that didn't happen. It was a pretty disappointing year for that team, but they're starting off on the right foot this year. It'll be fun to watch to see if they can keep this up. Also, Harrison Burton, he gets a solid top 15 finish. So a good start for the sophomore driver there. As you remember last year at the beginning of the season, it seems like he couldn't stay away from incidents on the track. Uh, on the flip side of that, we did have a couple drivers with disappointing days. Bubba Wallace, who, was running in there in the top 10, top 15 for most of the day. He has engine troubles there in the final stretch, ends up finishing in 30th place. And I'm sure that'll be a tough finish to swallow. Bubba had a good chance to get a solid finish, and it kind of went up in smoke. And he's had good cars to start the year. It's just stuff out of his controls keeping him from getting these finishes. So him and his teammate Tyler Reddick, who also finished 34th, they're going to be looking at going into Las Vegas, having a better day, and try to get their season back going in the right direction. And defending race winner Kyle Larson, he finished in 29th after being non-existent all day. I mean, He did show some speed there at the end. He had some electrical issues. They did get that fixed, and there at the end was running some pretty decent lap times. Just unfortunately by then it was too little, too late. He's 14, 15 laps down, and just did not get the result that I'm sure he could have had if he'd been able to stay on the lead lap and as strong as he was there at the end of the race. So this past weekend schedule at Auto Club Speedway got tossed around a little bit with all the rain, sleet, and snow they had at the track. The Saturday Xfinity race got moved to Sunday after the Cup Series, so fans at home and at the track were treated to a doubleheader. And the Xfinity Series put on a heck of a show and a wonderful way to send this track off. John Hunter Nemechek came away with the victory. He was one of the top cars throughout the day. He led the most laps at 49. And so he has started off the season with a second place and a first place finish. Pretty solid start to him as he's looking to get a championship with Joe Gibbs Racing. Sam Mayer, he bounces back from his tumble down the back straightaway last week at Daytona to finish in second. Justin Allgaier's teammate finished in third, and Justin looked pretty strong. It looked like his night was going to be messed up with some problems on pit road, but thanks to how much of a difference these fresh tires make, he was able to charge through the field, get himself back on the lead lap, and stay in contention for the race. Chandler Smith, he had a strong night, finishing in fourth. He was able to lead a lap. Josh Berry finished in fifth. He looked solid. And the way this race was, John Hunter led the most at 49, but it seemed like, especially there at the beginning of stage three, you didn't know who was going to come out on top of this thing. I mean, you had Cole Custer, the guy who everyone had pegged to win this race, and rightfully so, with him winning it last year. He wins stage one and two, leads 46 laps, but unfortunately, in stage three, he had some issues, and that put him back to a 27th place finish. So a little disappointing. It wasn't anything really he could control, but he's definitely going to be leaving this race, this track, feeling like he left one on the table there. You had Sammy Smith, who looked really stout, especially when Cole had his issues and he took charge up at the front. He led 14 laps. He did get spun out, which put him back to a 19th place finish. And Sheldon Creed led 15 laps. It looked like after Cole had his issues, it was going to be between him, Sammy, John Hunter Nemechek. They were all up there real close battling for the lead. And unfortunately, Sheldon's Day ends up with a 23rd place finish. And like I said, this was a great race. You had guys all over the place. You didn't know who was going to get the top spot. Austin Dillon, got to give a shout out to him. He finished in eighth place with part of the front of his car completely torn off. Brett Moffitt getting a top 10 for the new team that came up from the Truck Series for his new team. And like I said, this was a very exciting race. I hate that we won't be coming back to Auto Club Speedway as we know it. Unfortunately, the future of Auto Club Speedway in general is pretty cloudy. NASCAR has sold a good chunk of the land already for $500 million. Can't knock them there for that business decision, but to lose such a great track that was in its prime, put on entertaining races, it's a not even a bitter pill to swallow. It stinks all the way through. And they're still talking about doing the short track. There's been drawings and renderings of what that will look like. And I understand NASCAR fans want more short tracks, but I don't think they wanted it at the loss of Auto Club Speedway. Now, if they had said Texas Motor Speedway is going to go away and we're going to rebuild a short track there, fans would be celebrating all over the place. It's crazy how this top track, that's loved by the fans, is the one going, and not the track that really hasn't had very many competitive races or good races in recent memory. So unfortunate end to Auto Club Speedway, but hey, the Xfinity Series did their job. They went out there and put on a heck of a show. Some other drivers wanted to point out Joe Graff Jr. in his first start with the 19 car, he finishes in 11th. I know that was a big talking point on social media, is Joe Graff Jr. getting these races for Joe Gibbs Racing, and a lot of people wanting Trevor Bayne back in the car. Hey, I'm one of them. I would love to see Trevor Bayne get more runs with Joe Gibbs Racing. He was very competitive last year with the team, should have won 2 or 3 races. I know sponsorship's a big reason why we haven't seen him back yet, but hopefully that'll all get straightened up and he can get some races. If not this year, maybe next year, who knows? But I'm not going to knock Joe Graff Jr. A lot of people are wanting to or are on social media, why is this driver who hasn't done anything getting a ride in the top team? Look, I'm not going to knock the guy. He's had some okay runs with the teams he's been with, but he's mostly been with back market teams. I love to see some of those guys getting these top rides, see what they can do. And 11th place finish, can it be argued Trevor Bayne would have been up there competing for the win? Yeah, it can be argued. But you can't knock Joe Graff Jr. He went out there, kept the car clean, and come away with 11th place finish, nearly a top 10. So it was a decent day for him. The Sieg racing team, they had a solid day. Both Ryan and Kyle Sieg come away with top 15s. Anthony Alfredo with BJ McLeod, he gets a 17th place finish. Josh Williams, Mario Gosselin, they get a 16th place finish. So it was a real good day for some of these smaller teams and some of these drivers that are making the most of their shot with the big teams. So next week we'll have action from all three series at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. It's going to be another fun race. This next gen car for the Cup Series always always performs well at the mile and a half. Now they are making some adjustments to the road course and the short track setups for these cars. What that'll be like, I'm not sure, and we probably really won't know until they get ready to go to the first road course of the season. I don't count Bristol Dirt just because that's a whole different animal with them converting Bristol to a dirt track. But looking ahead for the Cup Series at Las Vegas, you got Alex Bowman, who's the defending race winner. But man, this is going to be a tough race to call and a fun race to watch. Watch Rick Hendrick. His cars, they always run well at this track, especially in the spring. Bowman finished first, Larson second. Ross Chastain, he finished third there last year and led the most laps. He's going to be somebody to watch, especially with the performance he had at Auto Club Speedway. And for some reason, keep an eye on those 2311 drivers. They're going to be coming out really motivated and looking to get their season started back going. They've had a rough go of it so far early this season, but I think this could be a good track for them to get that straightened out. Reddick had a top 10 there last year. Bubba, he got in a wreck there at the end of last year's Las Vegas race, but he was running up in the top 15. And I think they can put it together, and they'll be a team to watch to score some top 10s. And kind of my dark horse team to watch is going to be Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing. As I said earlier, this is a good track for Keselowski, and I expect with the way they've started out their season, he's going to be feeling pretty good, and is going to be a guy to watch throughout this race. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be a race contender, but he could sneak up there and get a top 5, and I would not be surprised. On the Xfinity Series side, the drivers who finished in the top 2 there last year, they're no longer there. Ty Gibbs, Noah Gragson, they're up in the Cup Series. So now, who is going to step up and get the win this year? Daniel Hemrick and Josh Berry finished behind them last year. Does one of those guys come away with it? Hemrick is going to be looking to get a good, solid finish. Again, he's been a little underwhelming with some of his finishes with College Racing, but this could be a good track for him. He's always been good at Las Vegas. This could be the place where he gets his second career win and kind of gets that monkey off his back with his only win coming in that championship race. So on the Truck Series side of it, this is a race where Kyle Busch is going to be running, so he's immediately going to come in as a favorite. It's going to be interesting to see how he runs in the new Chevy. This is his first time with the team, his first race attempting with it. He finished second there last year when they were running the Toyotas. Outside of that, this is going to be kind of another unknown race. I'm looking at the top 10 from last year, and a lot of these guys, aren't really there this year. Chandler Smith, he's in the Xfinity. Kyle Busch, he's going to be in this race, but you look at, Stuart Friesen, he finished up there in the top 5 last year. Ryan Preece won't be there, but you got guys that are up there in that top 10 from last year, like Tanner Gray, Matt DiBenedetto, Matt Craft, and Ty Majeski, that are going to be looking to improve their finish from last year. All in all, I'm looking forward. This is going to be a good, solid weekend of NASCAR racing, and it's going to be fun to watch as we get ready to go into the second race of the West Coast Swing. Now, after this past week's Daytona 500, where we had an overtime finish, fans and media members alike, they're calling for the end or at least the change of overtime rules. And this was a discussion that really picked up momentum as the week went on, leading into the weekend at Auto Club Speedway. Now, just going over a brief history of NASCAR and overtime finishes, this all started way back in 2004, where they would just do one attempt at a green, white, checker finish. Now, in 2009, they bumped it up to three attempts to get a green flag finish. 2016, they instituted the overtime line, which they would put on the backstretch of racetracks. Now, that experiment was a complete disaster. It was a lot of judgment calls and led to some controversial finishes. But Pete Pistone, he host with MRN, he had tweeted out after the race that the overtime experiment, you know, he applauded the overtime experiment, but in his own opinion, it was time to go back and to eliminate overtime everywhere and races return to the scheduled advertised distance. You also had a writer over at sportsnaut.com, Austin, and I may be pronouncing his last name wrong, Konetsky, and he was talking about how as far as the super speedway races, your Daytona and Talladega, to scrap overtime completely, saying there's simply more to lose than to gain when it comes to overtime at Daytona and Talladega. And I'm reading straight from his article. Most of the time, there are big wrecks that cause a lot of money out of the pockets of those in charge. They also significantly increase the threat of injuries. It's simply a safety issue on super speedways. Now, he also goes on to say, why tear up more cars, waste money, and put drivers at a higher risk of injury for more entertainment? The idea of overtime can stay in place for different tracks, but super speedways are a different beast. Now, with the whole safety aspect of it, I don't see how eliminating overtime, especially at the super speedways, is going to change any of that. There's still a run to the finish. They still have to get to that checkered flag, and drivers are still going to push their limits. They're going to be making those moves because they know the race is near its end. I don't see eliminating overtime completely taking out these big crashes we see at the end of races. There's still going to be desperation there, and drivers trying to get as much as they can. Now, whereas the current rules right now, if the yellow comes out and the field is taking the white flag, the race is over. I'm not too concerned about a race distance thing, like it has to be a true 500-mile race, simply because NASCAR started this for the fans to give them green flag finishes. You know, you look back to the 2002 Pepsi 400, caution came out with a handful of laps to go. It looked like fans thought that NASCAR had plenty of time to clean up the track. They could have thrown a red flag and finished the race under green. Instead, they ran the final few laps under caution. And this led to fans throwing all sorts of items on the back straightaway of the track, seat cushions, programs, their beverages. And it was just a big old mess. And it's not perfect the way the current overtime system is, but it's an attempt at it. It's pretty close to it. I'd rather see them attempt to give the fans what they paid to see, which is to come to see a green flag, checkered flag finish. Are you always going to get that? No, whether it's overtime or your regular scheduled distance race. A lot of people were wanting to point back, especially after Kyle Busch's comments at the Daytona 500, that, well, Dale Earnhardt, that race ended under caution and it's a celebrated race. And that is true. But that's because it's Dale Earnhardt. He was going for his first Daytona 500 in his 20th try. That is a historic moment in Daytona 500 history. And if they had overtime back then, I doubt fans really would have cared as long as Dale Earnhardt took the checkered flag. So whether they do anything with this overtime or go back to the regular distance race and letting it, if the caution falls too late, then so be it. We're going to finish the race under caution. I don't see that changing a lot as far as crashes and the safety aspect of it. How does taking away overtime change anything if there's still a checkered flag or a trophy to be gained? Now, in the past 20 Daytona 500s, since they've instituted overtime in some manner, there have been 12 of these races that went and finished into overtime. But I went and looked back at the results of each of those races. Of those 12, only five of those races had winners who weren't leading at the 500-mile mark. So just a little over 50%, you still had the guy who was leading at that 200th lap still winning the Daytona 500. And I'm a big fan of the overtime aspect. It does add that excitement, that drama to the end of these races. And I don't think NASCAR needs to touch this. I think it needs to be left alone because if you start moving it around too much, it's just going to become too complicated. Fans, they were tired of all these changes in the playoff point standings, and now that NASCAR has stopped that and stuck with this system they have now, it's been a lot more accepted. Same thing with the overtime. I don't know why this has become such a hot topic now. It's like it went from 0 to 100 in a matter of a day. I didn't feel like there was any buildup. There's I haven't seen any complaints in a mass like I have this past week after any of the other Daytona 500 or Super Speedway finishes that have gone into overtime. So I'm not sure. There are fans out there that say they don't even want to watch or go to a super speedway race due to the safety aspect of it, and that's all fine and dandy if that's your opinion. That's how you feel about it. But calling for this drastic of a change, and you think that's going to make things safer, that's way off base in my opinion. I just don't see the correlation where we're going to take away the overtime, the extended period of these races, and that's going to eliminate, you know, a higher chance of crashes and eliminate the safety worries of these drivers. Drivers are going to be drivers. They're going to go for that trophy. That's not going to change, whether it's to mile 500 or mile 523. And that'll wrap up this week's episode of Three Wide. As always, thank you for joining me and listening along. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening to this podcast from, whether it be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcast, Amazon Music, or at iHeartRadio, which is a new provider for us. You can also click on that link in the description below for our YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe button there so you know when our new videos drop. I missed this past weekend's video due to some technical difficulties, but hopefully we'll have all that straightened out by the time the checkered flag falls Sunday at Las Vegas. And also, be sure to head over to our sponsor, huntharvest.com. Let them know we sent you. Check out all their specials, including the mystery box, and be sure to enter that promo code RADDY18923. And I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their week, and we will meet back same time next week and go over all the action from Las Vegas Motor Speedway.